Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. This platform is for common sense people looking for up-to-date, accurate, and truthful information without the hot garbage corporate media bias. The power of one can lead to the power of many. You never know what small act that you may say or do that may literally change the lives of millions tomorrow. And don't you ever think that you can't make a difference, because you can.
Good morning, my fellow Michiganders. Good morning, my fellow Americans. Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. I am, of course, your host, Garrett Saldano. And man, oh man, I had to climb out of bed. I'm a little under the weather right now, but I had to climb out of bed today because this is a very important topic, as you guys are all fully well aware of. Over the past year and a half, I've been highlighting school boards across the country, and I have my top 5 bad ones, that is for sure. And what made that list and what I've been highlighting consistently is right here at home in Rochester Community Schools. And a lot of people always say, well, that stuff's not happening in Michigan. Yes, it may well be. And you have to be involved in your local school boards. You have to be involved with the candidates who are running. And I'm going to bring on a gentleman here in the next few minutes. He is doing some fantastic things right now. His name is Matt Wilk, and he started an organization called getkidsbacktoschool.org. And for all of you, that website is in the description of this video. If you are interested, and we're gonna dissect this thing, because I'm going to bring him on here in a few minutes. If you are interested in running for any type of school board, he has created a system to help people, because a lot of people that are running really don't know what it entails, what to do, how do I do it. He's going to walk you through with his organization. He's going to help. And this is just another example of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And I value that. And so without further ado, here is my man, Matt Wilk. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me on, Garrett.
Oh, it is my honor, man. And you and I were just spitballing here just several minutes ago about a variety of different issues and topics. And we're going to talk about not only Rochester School Boards, but I want to start off the show today to talk about a little bit about your organization, getkidsbacktoschool.org.
Sure, great, thanks. So I was on the Northville School Board for 8 years, was elected, served 2 terms. As I finished my last term, that was when sort of the left-wing mob came after me and tried to kick me off the board. Didn't work. Finished my term out. And over the next couple of years, I heard from a ton of parents across the state, hey, look, I would love to serve on my school board, but I don't know how. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, that's the easy part. I can tell you how. So we formed this organization really around getting grassroots parents into that system, because the school board is really the closest thing you have to citizen governance. It doesn't require any sort of expertise. If you are a parent and you're concerned and interested, you are as qualified as anyone else on that board. So throw your name in and run. And here's how you do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in the last election cycle in 2022, we got 21 candidates across the finish line, helping close to 90 this time, and really interested in bringing the running of schools, community public schools, back to the parents where it belongs.
Wow, that is absolutely, that gave me the chills, man. That's absolutely fantastic. I mean, that's one thing I think a lot of us have learned over the past 4.5 years is there are great people doing extraordinary things out there. And that's where this stuff kind of happens, is when there's a need for these type of organizations or this type of leadership, people will fill the void. And that's exactly what you're doing. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing and helping these folks, because it's much needed, obviously, especially with everything that we're seeing in the school boards across our country. And you just heard me talk about, and you have firsthand experience going through what you did in Northville. You were on that school board for 8 years?
That's correct. 8.5 years.
And obviously you're familiar because you're helping these school board candidates in Rochester right now raise money in the Rochester community schools and the shenanigans that's been going on over there. Can you highlight some of the things? We're going to show some videos of that school board meeting here in the next few minutes, but can you highlight what happened on Tuesday night to inform people what the policy that they passed?
So this is just absurd. So one of the attempts, going way back to 2012. So remember, way back in 2012, we passed right to work. Okay. And what school boards did at the time was they tried to run in and sign contracts with their unions to bind everyone to be union members, because they knew the policy had changed and would change. So this is very similar to what has gone on in Rochester. So in Rochester, They feel that there's an election coming. There's 5 seats up. There likely is to be some change. Parents that do not like what is going on when they find out. So what they're going to do is they're going to race in and make these things subject to a contract. One of them that I read about, I could not believe, was that parents would not get the right to find out what is being taught in their schools. By contract, if they ask the district, hey, look, I'd like to know what the curriculum is. What are my kids reading next week? Any ordinary parent, my parents were both teachers, I know this exactly. Any ordinary teacher says, yeah, sure, I want you to encourage a good communication between teacher and parent. No, not here. Rochester, the school board is willing to and signed a contract that said, no, that you're not allowed to tell them that. It's appalling, and that's what now again for the second time, parents are getting up off their seats and saying this is unacceptable. Certainly in Rochester, we're not doing this, and we're going to take it. We're going to take control of the ballot box.
Unbelievable that we're even having these types of conversations.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I mean, it's insane that we're even in America. Hey, we're allowing the government basically to take control of our kids and their corrupt unions. And parents, sorry, you're going to have to sit this one out. I mean, the audacity of what they're trying to do, and they're getting away with it when they have the majority of the school board. So you think that they got this kind of contract through because they know the writing is on the wall and these parents are pretty upset that they're going to get replaced. So they had to get these things done before they're elected out?
That's 100% correct. So something very similar happened in Grosse Pointe. So in Grosse Pointe, when they were working on a school clinic, parents hated it because the concept was kids could go to school to one of these clinics and receive services without telling their parents, and the parents could never know. And they raced to get it done. They ran in, and election occurred. A replacement occurred in January, and the first school board meeting, the new school board said, "Hey, we're going to discontinue this." And the administration said, "Well, we can't. We've already started." And they said, "Well, watch. we certainly can, and we are, and turn that ship around because that's what elections do." I think one guy once said, "Elections have consequences." So that's what they fear, and they're trying to lock all these things in. It's ineffective. It doesn't bind parents. So if the election turns out the way I hope it does, and they replace these people, and this goes back 2 years ago, they were just as bad. I mean, Carol Beth, who you and I both know, running for office, she's a sweet woman, she's a mom, and she stands up and says, "I'm Carol Beth and I'm running for school board," at a school board meeting, and they cut her mic off.
Yeah.
And the guy says, "You can't talk about this at a school board meeting," which is the most ignorant legal position I've ever heard. He's never read one ruling or law on this to make that proclamation just to stop her from getting elected. You know what happened? She got elected anyway. And now she's bringing friends. And when that happens, there's going to be change.
That's good. And the one thing about the Rochester School Board is I've been watching their shenanigans for over a year. They try to censor, Weaver, Trustee LeCouey is another one. And these folks aren't like, they try to label them as these fringe right, nationalists. They're moderate. I don't even think they even are Republican, to be honest with you. I think they're just moderate independents that are trying to do what's right. I've never asked them about their political affiliation, which shouldn't matter, by the way.
Right.
If you just go in there, it should be bipartisan, do what's right for the group as a whole, not just your own echo chamber. And that's the problem with a lot of these school boards is these school board members are only listening and doing policy according to their very small echo chamber, like with the boys using girls' locker rooms and restrooms and men competing in women's sports. I mean, we can go on and on with the insanity, but you can't take away constitutional rights and freedoms of the majority of people for just the rights and freedoms of the small. It doesn't work that way.
And beyond that, it's not good for teaching kids. It doesn't help the kids. If you came in with one of these things and say, "Hey, this is really going to be best for kids and X," okay, you're going to have parents who go, "Well, maybe I'm okay with it." But it doesn't help a kid to hide stuff from the kid's parents. But importantly, there are a group of people in Rochester and elsewhere who they don't believe that. They believe that the person who knows best is them. Is the government. The government knows best. The government can tell you how to help your kids. And we had this happen when we got our debate over our health clinic in Northville. And they would stand up and say, well, what if a kid thinks they need such and such a service and the parents refuse? So parents refuse. The kid's 13 years old. Parents get to decide that, not you. You don't get to supplement or supplant the judgment of a parent. And it doesn't help kids. It put kids in this terrible situation where they're getting one rule at school and one rule at home. And those are terrible situations. And that's what leads to a lot of the problems that we have.
And Matt, you're spot on. I mean, if our public school system wasn't a dumpster fire right now and kids were thriving, right? Reading and math test scores were through the roof, I don't think a lot of these parents would have anything to stand on because they're like, the kids are thriving. So obviously their policies and the way they're doing things and the things that they're teaching are working. We all should be on board on that. But the opposite is happening.
The opposite.
I mean, they're crashing. I mean, I just read a Detroit News article the other day that reading scores at a 10-year low for Michigan. The M-STEP scores show math is low. And I want to bring up this graph right now because what the Democrats tend to do is they just want to throw money at it. Okay. And this graph right here shows,
I love it. Yep.
The spending per achievement adjusted for inflation. So obviously we don't have a money problem, right? No. And there's another graph that I could show, but it shows that a lot of these, the spending is not going towards the kids. It's going to the administrators and it's not going to the teachers.
That's right. That's right.
That's where the teacher's like, we need to be paying more. And the majority of the parents would be like, absolutely, you deserve it. And the teacher unions are like, yay, and they run with it. But none of that money goes to the teachers. It goes to the gosh darn administrators.
That's right. That's right. You look at teachers and you look at two things that are very important. Teacher salaries have not gone up. Teacher to student ratio has gotten worse over the last 10 years. Maybe that's why you're not being able to teach the kids. But administrator to teacher ratio is through the roof. We once did an analysis of our district compared to Detroit public schools. We tried to keep it pretty lean in Northville. We really looked at trying to not hire any administrators when I was on the board. That reversed in 2020 when I left. But they had something like 10 times the administrators we did. So back a few years ago, there was something called the School Finance Research Collaborative, which was this big study. And people walked around and said, this is what proves that we need more money for schools. And I would always ask people, did you read it? Did you read it? Because if you read it, you would find that money, they're not recommending that money go to teachers. It's specifically excluded in the analysis. What they want is more administrators. They want more assistant principals. They want more coordinators, DEI coordinators. We need more of those. In my local district, we hired somebody for $170,000 a year, and no one can figure out what she does for a living. Instead of hiring 2 more kindergarten teachers to lower class sizes. So not only are the parents shortchanged, but the rank and file teachers are shortchanged. That's a very important difference. My parents were both union members, okay, but they were rank and file. And they would all the time see the distinction between what they were told was going to happen and what actually happened. So what all these teachers were told is, hey, just click that D and vote for any Democrat. And you know what's going to happen? Money comes from heaven. And it didn't. Yeah. We can talk about that too. We can talk about school, the school aid bill, because that was unbelievable.
So I think that's why it's so important people tune this in. And for everyone watching, this information has to get out. I mean, it truly does. So share this video, send this to people. If anyone is interested in running for local school board here in the next election cycle, obviously it's too late for November, but the next election cycle, he's got a great website to walk you through. It's getkidsbacktoschool.org. Let's get into some of the footage. And the first footage I would like to show is some of the nastiness that happens between the Democrat majority school board and the two people are just trying to bring some common sense, Trustee LeCouey and Trustee Weaver. So let's get into a little bit of attack that Mrs. LeCouey had to go through last night. Here it is.
Good question. The reality of our situation is that 21.5% of students who live in our district are choosing to use other public and private schools. That's over 4,000 students. That's up from 10 years ago when it was only 9 to 10% and the number was in the hundreds. Those parents didn't write letters or flood board meetings or stage
Trustee
protests.
LeCouey, could you please state your question?
They simply took their children and left. So my question is including this kind of language going to help us to attract students to our school when we keep seeing enrollment decline year after year after year, because that's the way we're going to be able to fund this contract, is if students choose to help use our public schools.
All right, Trustee Alsbach?
Trustee LaCouille, that's an excellent question. Why don't you answer that, since you've had one of your children leave the district?
Madam President, that is completely uncalled for.
I would remind all board members to please be respectful of each other.
Madam President, may I answer the question that she posed?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The personal choices that I make for my family are really my business, and I have to do what's best for my kids. My reason for pulling my daughter has to do with a lack of support for her academic needs, and I needed to get them redressed. And many parents in our G&D survey, when we took that survey, mentioned some of the same reasons that I've been voicing, which is a perceived lack of support for gifted and talented students.
Okay.
Class size and overcrowding.
Could we direct it
perceived
towards
far
the
left or woke
agenda?
ideology
Excuse me,
influencing the
Trustee
curriculum,
LaCouille,
and dysfunction
could
at the
you
board?
please address it
Madam
to
President,
this?
I am addressing her question.
Well, then I'm going to say it is not germane to the topic that is at hand, because
I
we are
was addressing
talking
her
about the
question. You gave
agreement.
me permission to do that.
Well,
And
I
now
thought
you're
it was in the-
interrupting me, which is.
You are correct. It is not germane to our agenda item at this time.
I mean, that's infuriating.
God, are you, first of all, a personal attack on someone's kid? Number one, inappropriate, tells you who you're dealing with.
Mhm.
Number two, we're going to attack you. And then when you start to answer the attack, we're going to cut you off. Are you joking? Does this person have any idea what their role is supposed to be? And all the teachers wearing pink in the thing in this crowd. Yay, yay, yay. You have got to be kidding me. Well, you know what? You know what? You got me fired up now too. And
that's why I crawled out of sick bed this morning to do this live. I said, I watched that and I was like, I got to help these folks no matter what. And so we got a couple more videos I would like you to watch and get your perspective on, and we'll analyze it. But just to let folks know, hey, this live today is to actually help the 5 candidates, right? There's 5 candidates that are running to try to get this board back.
Yeah.
Matt has been started this fundraising kind of push to help these candidates. And I'm asking for everyone right now. The link is in the description. I know times are tough right now. I know the economy. I know how everybody's hurting. We're all hurting. But we have to win at these local elections because we got to play the long game here. So I'm asking everyone, hey, buy them a cup of coffee. Donate $5. Donate $10. If you can donate more, God bless you. Please, they'll take it. But you have to get involved. And these things matter, because what happens if we don't take back, and a lot of people may say, well, that's not my district. It doesn't matter. When people start to set precedents and policy, that trickles everywhere, folks.
Sure does. Sure
And
does.
we've been exposing them, because it's mind-blowing that a year ago I was kicking and screaming, highlighting some of these school boards, and people are like, that's not happening in Michigan. That's not happening in my country town. Yes, it indeed. In fact, it was. And I continue to highlight, and people are like, holy cow, you have to be on the offensive. And you are taking time away. These people who are running are taking time away from their lives to actually make a difference. So please, before we go on, after the show, if you can do $5, you can do $10, help these local candidates. I'll be spreading this video out everywhere on my email list and everything to try to fundraise. Let's get to this next example. And this one really, that one got you fired up, Matt.
I sat on the board, man. So that, and I know Carol Beth really well, and I know Andrew as well. And to be assaulted like that and have them just shrug their shoulders like, well, okay, all right, well, I guess we'll see what happens.
In the level of professionalism, you know, their composure, both of them.
Oh yeah.
Weaver and LaCouille, it doesn't go unnoticed. They are true leaders, and I know that community deeply appreciates them taking the arrows nonstop, because they are nasty, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's bring up this next example of a parent speaking up.
Hi, I'm Catherine Agarwal, and I'm the parent of RCS child. So I'd like to say good evening, members of the board, administrators, and fellow community members. I stand before you tonight deeply concerned about the tentative master agreement between the REA and the RCS BOE. As parents, we have always been assured that our involvement in our children's education is not only welcomed, but essential. However, this new agreement threatens to undermine that principle in ways that are both unprecedented and alarming. First and foremost, the proposed language in the contract appears to create a significant barrier between parents and the classroom. By allowing teachers to withhold classroom information from the parent, this agreement fundamentally shifts the balance of power away from parents and toward an unchecked academic freedom for teachers. This is not about stifling creativity or censoring education. It's about ensuring that parents are not left in the dark about what their children are being taught. The idea that any record of classroom procedures could be withheld from us is deeply troubling. How can we as a parent fulfill our responsibility to guide and support our children's education if we are denied access to basic information? The new academic freedom clause, as outlined in the contract, goes far, far beyond what is necessary to protect teachers' rights. The broad language opens the door to instruction that may not align with approved curriculum standards or the values many people in the community. This clause seems to provide teachers with near total immunity from the consequences of their actions in the classroom, effectively sidelining parents and school officials in decisions about what is appropriate for our children. Moreover, the requirements that parents must be accompanied by an administrator when observing a class adds another layer of distance between us and our children's education. This kind of restriction not only discourages parental involvement, but also sends a message that our presence in the educational process is unwelcome or even suspect. The Michigan School Code clearly states it is the natural fundamental right of parents and legal guardians to determine and direct the care, teaching, and education of their children. Yet this contract, as it stands right now, seems to disregard this fundamental right, placing teachers' autonomy above the cooperative relationship that should exist between schools and families. I urge the board to reconsider the provisions in this tentative agreement. Parental involvement is not just a nicety, it's a cornerstone of a healthy, functioning educational system. Any contract that diminishes our role in our children's education should be approached with the utmost of caution. Excuse me, could you put your sign down in front of me? Let's work together to ensure this agreement fosters transparency, accountability, and a true partnership between parents and educators. Now, Barb Annas just spoke there about how we parents should trust. Everyone should trust.
Thank you very much.
However, Doug Hill said
Mrs.
F you
Agarwal,
to a parent in your May
Mrs.
2024
Agarwal,
meeting.
Mrs. Agarwal,
The
your time is
REA
up.
president said
You are
F you
now-
to a parent.
Do you know what happened there when they started cheering? I heard that the former REA president, Doug Hill, was smiling or something or laughing. I don't know.
It's so classless. And look, don't tell me that you're concerned about the children's education. That's your job. That's offensive to me as the child of two teachers. My parents busted their butts and took really low pay for a long time. And the one thing they cared about was getting their kids from point A to point B. These people have nothing but self-interest. All they care about is protecting themselves. Every decent teacher knows that if you want to really move a student, especially a troubled student, from where they are to where they need to be, you have a great working relationship with all their centers of influence, a parent, a pastor, a coach, right? You have relationships with those because they help move the child along, and you have a commonality of purpose, and you understand what you're doing. These people, no, this is about attacking. You're attacking my system, so I'm going to attack you back.
And the unprofessionalism of the teachers, they were holding up signs trying to block her from the video,
Right?
Not the voice of our teachers. You just don't do things as a professional. You just don't. I mean, that's like being a public servant. I mean, all common sense has went out the window with politics and professionalism anyways.
Sure.
But you just didn't do those types of things as a public servant, as a teacher, as a professional. You just have to sit there and listen to both sides. You don't have to agree with them, but you're not there waving signs and trying to prevent people's First Amendment right for speaking and stuff like that. It's just wrong. And that's the nastiness that has evolved in this conversation.
And they should know better because they're supposedly teaching these values to our kids. If they were having a discussion in their American history class and somebody stood up and said, hey, I blah, 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 and another kid walked in front of that kid and held a sign in his face, would the teacher say, oh, that's fine. That's totally common discourse? No, of course not. They'd say, sit down. You had your say. Now they have their say. But that's not what they believe. Here's one of the other things that happened is when Right to Work passed, a lot of people left the union. And what happened was a lot of people that left the union were more on the moderate teach only kind of side. So what you're left with is this sort of boiled down radicalism that exists in some of these EAs where they're only the hardcore radicals. I mean, you look at what's left over in places like the AFT and the NEA, and you look at what they sort of stood for and say, is that what regular teachers stand for? The answer is no, because they don't represent them anymore. They represent the hardcore left-wing group that they are. And I always, when I'm doing my training, I always say, make a distinction between the teacher and the union, because they're very, very different.
Okay, that's a great point, because a lot of people just put them all in the same melting pot, right? Like all teachers are bad. And I agree with everything you just said. No, there are literally just a few bad apples that are spoiling the bunch right now. The majority of the teachers, I feel, that are trying to do the right thing, but they got all this freaking energy from the teacher union and the people who belong in the teacher union that are constantly overshadowing the good they're trying to do. What percentage would you think, because I don't know what that percentage is, what percentage do you think like is out there, like teachers that are like your parents, and then you got these radicals? I mean, what's that difference? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I would say that my last review of it said that something like 40-ish% of teachers left the teachers union. Okay, so they don't want to be a part of it. But they, Right to Work, and then they tried to repeal it, but that doesn't apply to public school employees, and they're always, this is a disaster. And I would say, so of that remaining, say 60%, I'd say maybe a quarter, maybe 15% of them are these radical lunatics. And they, look at what they're supporting. Are you joking? And we just had this in Rochester. The Rochester Communist Society came out and against the people running for school board, the 5 good candidates. And I said, that's perfect. Let everyone know who you are. Because between your Palestine Solidarity event and Comrade Corner, people are going to look at that and say, maybe they're not the best person to tell me who to vote for school board. So we're going to get that word out about who they are and what they're going to do. And the one thing I want to make sure people understand is when they win, change is coming. Okay, because you have that authority as a board to make all kinds of changes, starting at the top with the superintendent to say, you know what, this isn't the right direction for the board. And if you don't like the new direction we're going, we'll be happy to accept your resignation.
Which I'm going to again point everybody to the link that I put in the description to donate what you can to help these Rochester Community School Board candidates take back their board. There's 5 of them. And we're trying to raise money for them right now so they can take it back. Okay. $5, $10, donate something, folks. Okay. I used to say on my campaign trail, the most humbling thing is when somebody donated, I think it was like $15, $20. And she's like, hey, I collected cans to be able to donate this to your campaign. And holy cow, did I feel the bricks of the backpack load up of responsibility, because that woman literally couldn't afford it, went around and collected cans because she believed in me and believed what we are doing. So my goodness gracious, folks, I know whatever you can donate to these folks, it's going to help. I want to bring the vote on this garbage contract that they agreed upon and how Trustee Weaver tried to basically, again, just what I humbly watched is just common sense, and he gets cut off again. So watch this.
On this subject. So
Madam
at the
President.
moment,
I have a brief statement, which is allowed by Robert's rules.
A very brief, because you've already had your two.
I'm allowed a brief statement by Robert's rules. There's no time limit on brief statements. Thank you. So I just want to acknowledge how many comments we just heard, and clearly there's a lot of emotion on both sides. There's definitely some gaslighting on one side, not being accurate. So brings us back to just, again, strip all the emotions away from this. The protections in themselves, even the examples given weren't actually protections. It was someone giving the examples of things teachers do. That's what everyone expects teachers are doing. We have to acknowledge the specific actions that have been identified within our district that have taken away some of that trust, which is, again, very specific incidents. When we don't address specific incidents and we speak in broad generalities is when, yes, the cloud of suspicion gets granted over all of your teachers. That's, again, why I go back to and say, if this language was not in it at all, what fundamentally changes? Because to the community, as we know, the board, if it ever decided to draft policy, can write a policy tomorrow, could actually draft
Trustee Weaver, you are past the short
controversial
comment.
material policy that I've proposed.
Trustee Weaver.
That actually allows teachers to touch
Trustee
all
Weaver.
topics in a
Madam President.
transparent
Weaver,
way.
please.
So again, we
Trustee
continue to see
Weaver.
people want to shut down conversation and real dialogue.
Trustee Weaver,
'cause
you
that's
have
what the
had your
majority
two
does.
comments,
Because
and you've
end of
already
the
made
day,
an additional,
the
this is not
contract
short.
just creating
Madam
this
President, I
divide.
call the question.
Trustee Weaver, your time is up. We are ready to vote on this. So we have a motion on the floor right now to approve the REA tentative agreement as presented. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no.
No.
And I'm sorry, Trustee Lukui, how did you vote?
It's my duty to vote no.
You voted no. Okay, so that is a 5-2 vote. The contract is approved.
So obviously those were all the teachers that were there to support hiding things from parents.
And just to be clear, we see that 5 of the 7 board members, their constituency is not the parents, their constituency is not the students, their constituency is not the rank and file teacher who would never do this. Their constituency is the pink shirt wearing union members who want this contract.
Wow, that well said. Everything you just said was absolutely spot on. So that, I mean, those types of boards, unfortunately, there's a few of them out there. There's nasty, but Rochester Community Schools is obviously one of the ones that I continue to highlight because they're in my top 5 of the nastiness. And nastiness meaning not listening to parents, not listening to the constituents, just to their small little echo chamber and radical union members. And this insanity has to stop.
Yeah, I mean, not even listening to their own board members. You would never cut off, not when we had in our board a big conservative majority and we had a member of a teachers union in another district who would speak on topics and let them go, let them speak. That's the point. That's the whole point of this governance system that we have, is that everybody gets to talk, and at the end of the day, we get to take a vote. And when you cut off conversation, you get people suspicious. Why are you cutting that person off? Why do you not want to hear what they have to say? And that's just appalling. And that lady in particular, that school board president, she simply has to go because she does not understand what her role is.
No, she's been absolutely horrific over the past year and a half that I've been watching. And it's funny, and still on the social media platforms, Facebook's starting to get a little bit better. I mean, they used to be really, really hard to post this type of content on it. But since Zuckerberg came out and said, he's not going to be bullied by the government anymore, they're allowing this type of conversation to happen. Obviously, with Twitter, with Elon, has been fantastic. Yep. But one of the platforms I continue to have problems with is TikTok. I call it commie TikTok. You're not allowed to talk about boys using girls' locker rooms and restrooms. You're not allowed to talk about men competing in women's sports. You're not allowed to post school boards of parents standing up and saying, I don't want my daughter in a locker room with a boy. That is considered hate, and I have been deplatformed 3 times.
Wow. Hate.
We're just showing a public forum where people, kind of like what we're talking about today, and they deplatform me. Hundreds of thousands of followers gone, so I'm back on there rebuilding again. But the censorship still exists, and this communist kind of takeover. They want to continue to divide us. They want to continue to take away people's freedom of speech. They want to continue to take away people's right to stand for their own kids and allow what you're saying, big government, to take over. And that's exactly what the teacher union is about, is big government, more administrators, more oversight with administrators. That's government.
That's government. It's all and they always say they're the experts. You know the expert at teaching 4th grade math is? It's a 4th grade math teacher. It's not an assistant principal of blah, 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 or whatever, assistant superintendent of the 9th degree, whatever it is. That's not the people who are the experts in this field. And it's the same nonsense. The reason why they go back to the playbook is it worked last time. We're going to hide in the basement. We're going to censor content that disagrees with us. Weirdly that it happens, I don't know, a month before ballots go out. So weird. And it's almost, and the big thing is, I think this cycle, especially after the assassination attempt, I think people have seen through it. I think they say, know what? No. We're not doing this anymore. We need to turn this around. This is not acceptable. And as you saw Carol Beth mention, parents vote with their feet. So in your local district, go and find out what happened to enrollment over the last 3 or 4 years. I'll bet you dollars to donuts, it went down and went down a lot. And they don't like to talk about it because parents, they're not going to take the chances. I'm not going to go through the 5-year plan with my 10th grader. That's not going to help them until they are out of school. So they take their kids out of the school. And then what happens to funding? Funding goes down. And then what happens to programming? Programming has to be cut. And they all look around like, it's like the hot dog meme. We're going to look for the guy who did this to us. You did this to you because you didn't listen to parents in the first place.
Yeah. And what people don't understand, so many people are like, take your kids out of school, take them. Look, here's what's going to happen. I mean, you have every right to take your kids out of it. It would be tough to stay in that school district if you had the means to take school, put your kid in another school with cool school choice and everything, which I agree with 100%. But their next play is, as they continue to control the public school system, the state government is going to start to hammer down on what? Charter schools, private schools, homeschoolers. That's the next play. They play the extreme long game, and they're very successful at it.
That's right.
And so if we go ahead,
they know what their competition is.
Amen.
And they said, look, charters. I can go on this for hours. My local idiot, Matt Colazar, who is our D rep, who is I'm a teacher. And the first thing he said was, we want transparency in charter schools. And I said, hey, dude, how about some transparency in public schools?
Yeah.
Right? You're worried about financial reporting. It didn't really bother you when Detroit Public Schools was 5 years behind on their audit. You all went, well, nothing I can do about that. But all of a sudden they leave the traditional public school. Remember, charter schools are public schools. So when they leave the traditional public school, then you're all freaking out. It's not about public school because the charter school is a public school. What is it about? What do charter schools not have that regular traditional public schools have? Teachers unions.
Yep. And that's what they're afraid of. And so that's why it's so important, folks, that the people that are willing to stay and fight, we got to support them.
Right.
So for the last time on this podcast today there's a link in the description. Click on it, donate what you can. Let's raise some money for these brave people getting and putting their hat into the arena. And again, Matt, my goodness gracious, thank you for everything that you're doing. And again, his organization, getkidsbacktoschool.org. If you're interested or have someone that you know that's interested in running for local school board, my man here has put in a system of support for you and knowledge so you can be aware. So Matt, God bless you, brother.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And anytime you want to talk schools, I'm at it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would very much like to do that and to bring you on after the election on what we can expect on some of these school boards that you helped take back.
Awesome. Love to have it.
Have a great day, brother.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Wow. Wealth of knowledge, that man. Thank you to him and everyone else that is involved in the getkidsbacktoschool.org organization. again, folks, let's raise some money for these candidates. You've seen how nasty this school board, and you've seen the two good people and what they're up against. And if you've been watching me, they've been up against this garbage for a very long time. And running for office and be involved in politics, it is very stressful. It is draining. These folks continue to take to arrows. Let's show them some support. Let's get them some support. Like I said, buy them a cup of coffee, $5, $10, whatever. If you can do more, please do more. But let's help these candidates get back to school board. We can dig our heels in the sand, and then we can start implementing policy that is going to help all students. Okay? Until next time, God bless you. God bless the state of Michigan, of course, and always God bless these United States. Keep standing up because you matter.